Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. Thank you for joining us for episode 5 of The Last of Us. This episode is called Endure and Survive, which are two words that mean something.
Sounds like Star Wars planets.
They do sound like Star Wars planets that are no longer with us. This is starting off well. I'm glad we're here. We've had a number of different things go on, from children to storms, acts of God, and the biggest one, it's Valentine's Day. So just off camera and off mic, both Tom and I have a significant other staring at us while they slowly sharpen a knife, maybe. I don't know, load a gun. You'll have to describe what's happening on your end. I can only speak to mine, but I've never seen a watermelon smashed with such vigor or anger.
So that's what she uses that hammer for.
Yes, exactly. Let's kick this off, Tom. I'm going to start by just saying I enjoyed this episode and the swings that were taken. I enjoyed it. The show continues to kind of surprise in terms of what it's willing to do. And once again, I think I was a little bit afraid that we were just going to be on a journey, kind of handling some of the same generic stuff. But, I mean, we had a sniper scene in this one, which locked me in, you know?
Yeah, for sure. This is great. Like, I mean, knowing and having played the games, knowing what was going to happen didn't make any of this any easier. And they just did such a fantastic job of capturing like the horror of this world and, you know, the kind of the mirrored relationship with Sam and Henry and Ellie and Joel and what they're doing here. And I think it's safe to say at this point that the first thing that you do if you run into Joel and Ellie on the road is run the other way.
Sure.
Everybody they run into just dies. So
Sure.
They are not Rabbit's Foot for sure.
Sure. So that's rule number 1 in this world is
Yes.
don't befriend Joel and Ellie.
Rule number 2. Rule number 1 is always seatbelts. Rule number 2 is don't befriend Joel and Ellie.
Yep.
But I also want to start off by saying, oh, I'm sorry, did you have a third?
My third was just don't eat wheat, but that's kind of a rule that I've been trying to follow for years. So who knows?
It's working well, man. But I do want to start off by saying, you know, all these characters that we've had that have crossed the path of Joel and Ellie have just been so phenomenally acted. And this, again, with Henry played by Lamar Johnson and Sam played by Kevon Woodward, just incredible performances. And these stories would not hit as hard if they didn't have these incredible actors, young actors too, playing these roles. So just want to kind of give props to both Henry and Sam as these actors because they crushed it. And just like we saw with Bill and Frank's relationship, it just helps sell this world. And because, I mean, a lot of these storylines are really just driving the story of Joel and Ellie, right? Like pushing them either closer together or further away. So it's kind of a bummer that's kind of the way this is seen, I guess, a little bit. That they're really just a catalyst for Joel and Ellie and their relationship, but incredible episode.
I think it's okay that if you have two main characters and the show is about their journey, like, unfortunately, you have to come to expect that everyone that appears in that world is either going to be there for a brief time and a terrible end, or they're going to be there for a brief time and ride off into the sunset in a different direction. At this point, no one's ridden off into the sunset on this mortal plane. They've ridden off into the sunset on that mortal plane. So, but I agree with you. Yeah, it's amazing how much a show can just be better when the actors are good. So I mean, it seems like a crazy thing, but yeah, and I don't feel like, you know, sometimes they bring in like big names or people, you know, that are well known. I didn't know either of these two actors, and I thought they did a phenomenal job. Some of the other, you know, like Bill and Frank, we had some relationship with those actors, but they did a great job.
Yeah, and the young man that played Sam, Kevon Woodward, he's deaf in real life. So like all the ASL and signing that he did, apparently none of the other actors on set like knew any ASL, so they had to kind of learn it. Just a beautiful addition of Sam and just adding to the tension and horror of somebody that's deaf having to live in this world that is already crazy as it is was just incredible. I think I was listening to the showrunners they were searching for like this type of kid. They wanted a young kid who was deaf, and they struggled to find like the right actor. And I think at a certain point, Craig Mazin like posted on Twitter, he's like, "This is what we need." And still only ended up getting a handful of additional auditions. And this is where they eventually found Kavan here. So,
that's interesting. That is interesting. I guess I need to start hopping on Twitter and looking for auditions for, I don't know, 30-year-old white guys that do a podcast. There's only a few of us out there. So, anyways, let's kick it off. We're going to go through the episode, which starts off with some freedom chanting in the streets. And where we left off, if you'll remind me, is we left off with the cliffhanger of Ellie and Joel sleeping, and then Sam and Henry holding them at gunpoint. That's where the last episode. So we don't necessarily pick up right in that room. We pick up a little bit essentially before that with the story of Henry and Sam. I, for some reason, got to be honest, I thought it was a father and son duo. It took me a little while into the episode to realize they were brothers, which I don't know if that was me just not paying attention. But it changed the dynamic a little bit. I think I was looking at it from like a father-son relationship, and then it turned into a brother relationship. And as someone who loves all of his brothers equally, other than Job, I don't care for Job. It was a little bit different. But Henry and Sam are watching all the freedom chanting that's going on in the street, and anytime a crowd gathers to burn, execute people, and shout freedom, it's typically going pretty well. They are murdering Fedra, so this is not that soon after the resistance is overthrown, correct?
I think Daybake mentioned it was like 10 days maybe,
okay.
So it is not long after that the government is getting overthrown, and, well, I guess government, whatever Fed want to call Fedra, but this is not a peaceful transition of power for sure.
No, it is not. This is, I think, the part, because in the last episode, we see them with guns and it cuts. We don't see much of Henry and Sam. This is then where they establish early in the episode that Sam is deaf. And this is
I think they see him on the side of the road, kind of doing some signing and everything. And this is new from the game. And I think this was an idea that came from Craig Mazin, who was just a fan of the game and the showrunner. And when he brought it up to Neil Druckmann, the guy that created the video games, he was like, I think he literally said, "You mother effer," because he thought it was such a brilliant idea to make Sam, the character, be deaf, because it just increases kind of the dependency that Sam would have on Henry in this world. And I think it's a great juxtaposition to Ellie, who we've had, as a character, just never stops talking. And we had long stretches and scenes where there's just silence, and it's them doing ASL back and forth. And it kind of really slows things down. So it's really, really cool addition.
Yeah, very interesting. We then find ourselves with Kathleen. We're back in the area with all the cells where they have rounded up all the collaborators. And I don't know any of these collaborators, but just the way they're there, I didn't like them. And Kathleen really making a strong case for my favorite character in this show. And there's a discussion of where's Henry. This is her driving plan, is she wants Henry because Henry is the reason that her brother was killed. She feels he was the collaborator that gave him up. So we have her talking about, I guess, putting all these people on trial, if I remember correctly.
Which is funny, yeah. It's just the absolute farce of the trial, and I think we see it in the scene earlier where there's that car going through the streets is like, if you're a collaborator, come out, we will have a fair trial, and that's just completely bogus, and everybody there clearly knows it. But I love how she kind of waves it off. She's like, we can have a trial. We know you're all guilty, so then we'll move on from that. It's just great. And then even when she says like, where is Henry, she gives that big loud clap, and then just gains everybody's attention there. It was great. She's I'm with you. She's probably not my favorite character. We'll maybe dive into her motivations here in a bit, but I love the way this actress plays the character and delivers these lines. She's so cold and calculated.
Oh, I think you misheard me, Tom. I said she was my favorite character. Okay. Kathleen, my favorite character on record. I look forward to see what happens to her throughout the rest of this series. Some guy in the group of collaborators. I don't know, what is a group of collaborators called? Is it a murder? Is it a mob? There's got to be a name for a group of them as they roam the plains.
A pod of collaborators.
A pod of collaborators, a podcast of collaborators. The guy who, I don't think he meets a very good end, gives up Dr. Edelstein, who is the gentleman that is in the cell from the other episode. And he's like, listen, they were together. He's like, they're holed up in the city. And I really thought about this. I was like, is he giving up a whole lot of information here? Isn't everyone here holed up in the city? Like, and forgive me, I know they just won a Super Bowl. Spoilers for those of you that haven't watched the Super Bowl.
Recorded the Super Bowl.
Recorded the Super Bowl and are waiting to watch it. And they're like, oh, it's a safe space. I can listen to this podcast about The Last of Us. Surely these guys won't give up the answer. Anyways, the Chiefs won, the Eagles lost, and it's a big city, so I don't feel like this guy's given up a whole lot when he's like, yeah, working with Edelstein, and he's holed up in the city, which I guess he's given up a name. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, it's Edelstein to potentially get her closer, or maybe it's the idea that they are still in the city, because I think there's an argument to be made. Maybe they did squeak out somehow and are holed up elsewhere, but the fact that now she knows in the city, she wants to. And that's when we get to the next scene, right, where she says, Perry, you got to go door to door, take all of our men, we're going to find him. And then we get a little bit from Perry saying, like, going door to door at this point when we know there's other more pressing issues, like he's not defying Kathleen here, but certainly asking the questions that should be answered based on what we see at the end. And Kathleen's response, like, this is not my seventh priority. So she has her priority set on Henry, and there's nothing changing her mind.
Yeah, Perry does a great job as a second in command, working for a crazy person, doing the thing where, like, you don't necessarily want to follow their order directly, so you got to give them a little bit of a, oh, is that really what we should be doing? Oh, yeah, no, I'm not questioning you. You got to kind of work your way around it so you don't get hung. Anyways, Kathleen. Or burnt, yeah. Speaking of which, she's like, kill the collaborators, burn the bodies, so much for a trial. Once again, number one fan over here. Just Swift. Kathleen Swift Justice something. I don't know her last name, but Swift Justice is her nickname. It's on all the signs. The people were chanting it in the street. I'm going to drop my bit for a second and just say I don't care for characters that are just evil to be evil. Like, I got it. Her brother was killed, and she feels like that betrayal, but I don't know. I got a real problem with people that are, like, so evil in this world that they're willing to kill children, and I don't know. I didn't feel like there was enough here to warrant it. I'm not saying I didn't. I don't know. Maybe it's just my issue with evil people.
That's fair. Don't know. I don't like evil people either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. She is. We've got 2 episodes of her, right? Like, we saw the last episode, and it was kind of more cliffhangery, and they needed kind of 2 episodes, I think, to kind of tell this whole storyline. But she very much is. She's like a kindergarten teacher gone bad, like with her demeanor. She almost reminds me of, like, if Walter White was a kindergarten teacher instead of a chemistry teacher.
Sure.
This is her. But when what they're playing at is like her justification for this vengeance, and because of her love for her brother, she's doing all of this. And I think it's done quickly, but at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is play these parallels on the things that people do for love. I think ultimately is what we get at, and we get a little bit more about her brother's backstory, Michael, who was not killed by Henry by any means, but just kind of given up by Henry. And I think that helps not justify any of this stuff, but give us a little more understanding of how she kind of became to power and why she's doing the things that she's doing.
Yeah, she's like Meatloaf. She would do anything for love, and probably that, because
probably
nothing would stop her. I thought I read somewhere that the character's background is she was a teacher, so I don't know if you are just picking up that vibe, but I think you're certainly on the right track. Not that there's anything wrong with teachers. Please, the union, don't come after us. In fact, Tom and I both have teachers, a lot of teachers in our families. We love them, but they do yell and throw apples sometimes. That's all. That's all I'm saying. That's all. And they're justified most of the time. If your finger painting is bad, they're going to throw an apple. That's just how it works. Whew. All right. Speaking of finger painting, oh, watch this transition. We're in the attic, and Dr. Edelstein is there. He's kind of showing Henry and Sam around to their new room. He's like, listen, out here, very open concept loft. You could put in a fireplace here. Here's some cans of food. He's obviously helping them. This is also kind of an interesting moment where we discover that all the guns everyone has are empty at this point.
Yeah, right.
They're just waving around empty guns, which I think is a community staple of when they say, like in 99% of gunfights, the person with the fake or empty gun is always the victim, which I've misquoted that horribly, but I always thought it was a funny part in Community, the TV show. But that's a different podcast. Yeah, so all the guns are empty, Tom.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is where we get the doctor he's kind of having the back and forth with Henry and seeing that kind of Sam's scared. And he makes specific mention that, well, Sam is scared because you are scared. So you kind of need to be strong, whatever, for him. And this is where we get that kind of touching moment where Henry gives Sam all of the crayons and allows Sam to kind of clean up this room, which is all dusty and ugly, as he signs and says, like, hey, like, let's draw. And I would argue these crayons probably can't draw that well on these walls, because those pictures came out fantastic and very vibrant in color, but was a really cool scene.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I hope that's the level of nitpicking we're doing, but I would like to point out that I think the reason Kathleen is so upset with Henry and wants his blood is because he stole all those crayons and paints from her kindergarten class,
yeah.
And now her children have nothing to eat. So
that's what she's
forgive
really
me.
mad at.
Yeah, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, we get a little bit of like Sam's board here, and this definitely. I mean, I don't know if I had one of these as a kid, but I remember this being a thing with these like magnet boards where you can kind of write on it and then just pull up the paper and then kind of write again. But if you kind of look at it, it's like faint. It's got like Woody the Woodpecker on it. Such a cool little ad that he wears this around his neck as kind of his communication tool. Pretty cool.
Yep, I don't know that I had one of those, and honestly, it took me a little bit to realize it was like a carbon paper reusable thing, because I kept thinking he was ripping off a sheet of paper, and I was like, guys, in this world, there's only so much paper, but it's all right. For those of you that are hearing something in the background, that's because for some strange reason, our state is getting a torrential downpour, and Tom's experiencing it on his end. So,
well, but here's what's going on. I'm trying to set the mood for this podcast. It's a very dark and ominous episode. This is, as you can hear, my skylight is getting destroyed with water. So, here, we're in it together.
You're welcome, everyone, for whatever is going on over there. We've gotten rid of the rain. Tom has made some great sacrifices for this podcast. Right now, I believe he's in some sort of underground bunker covered in about 8 different weighted blankets so that the sound is blocked out. So if you're at home, I would like you to give a 10-second round of applause for Tom to bring him back to a joyous time, because no one likes rain. Certainly out in the desert, we despise it. We wish there was no water.
I love the rain. This is almost making me sad that I can't go outside and enjoy the rain. Now I'm in my sub-basement closet.
Tom typically strips down to nothing and runs out in the rain like he just got out of the Shawshank prison. But unfortunately, it's Valentine's Day, and we're recording a podcast that is just taking longer and longer the more I talk, and our spouses are still upset with us. So we live here now, Tom. We live here, and we're might as well get married, buddy. All right, 10 days later.
Plenty of blankets in this closet.
10 days later, we've got Sam and Henri in the attic. They're hungry. Turns out they did not ration those cans of food. They went through them quickly in
I mean,
order
it's 10 days. Henry said it should last him 11, so only 1 day off. It's pretty good.
There were a lot of cans there. These guys were like, "We'll carbo load on day 1, and that'll maintain us through the 10 days." The doctor is not showing up. We find out, and I think this is really good writing. They're like, we know kind of what's happening, but we've got to still see the characters like it dawn on them, that the doctor's been detained, and Henry's come to the conclusion, we've got to get out of this attic because there are no more surfaces to color.
Well, and I guess the assumption is if he's not coming back, did he potentially give up their position too? Like, I don't think Henry thinks they did, but in any event, they know they have to get out of here. And I love this emotional moment that they have when kind of, I think Sam ultimately understands that he's not coming back, and they even mention that he's probably dead. Sam gives Henry a hug, and it was just like it's what both characters needed in this moment, just a little moment to not say goodbye to him, but say that we're here for each other and we're going to get through this.
Sure. And then I believe this is where they start painting masks onto each other, and I won't lie, much like while you've been dealing with the rain, I was drinking then and now, and so all I could think about was, why does Bane wear the mask? Why does Bane wear the mask? Which is, why does Sam wear the mask? That's all I could think about the whole time this was happening.
Well, I mean, Sam is completely unrecognizable now, so maybe they wouldn't even be looking for him.
That's true. They're just like, oh, that young man, he seems to have a mask on. We don't know who he is. We have Sam and Henry that have snuck down to like the bottom level of the building, and they get to witness the Joel and Ellie ambush where our sweet S10 sees its last ride.
I like this scene, though, right? Getting it from the other perspective. I think if you go back and watch this scene again from Joel's perspective in the last episode, you can see that white door in the distance that has kind of the windows up top. I don't think you can actually see Henry peeking from it, but it's a cool setup to be able to see the sequence again from their view.
Yep. And Henry watches Ellie destroy these guys in this fight.
Very ominously with that big thunder.
Okay, is that coming through on my end?
we got to time this so we say things when the thunder. When you see lightning, say something very ominous.
Listen, I'm not seeing the lightning. I'm just hearing the thunder over here, and I gotta be honest.
This is great.
I wish I was out back watching it, but I'm here for the people that for some reason listen to us, Tom. So. Henry's like, new plan. We're going to go join those people because Joel and Ellie seem formidable. So this is then where we pick up on the end of the last episode, where we're back in the weird office high-rise sleeping spot where they're on therapist couch cushions is the only way I could describe it. We've got the empty gun stick-up happening. And Henry very quickly is like, hey, like, we're not here to hurt you. We're trying to, he like tries to establish some trust. Like, I'm going to pull the gun away. Like, don't do anything. And Joel says something, and Ellie has a great moment where she's like, no, everything's fine. Joel just has an a-hole voice, which I thought was a great line.
And Joel's like, everything is great. Just very grunting it out and just making Henry very uneasy.
Yeah, he sounds like he's on the verge of violence, not peace. But we find out Henry's the most wanted man in Kansas City. He's the Patrick Mahomes of people in Kansas City right now. And they do eventually put the guns down. They share some food. And, Henry's trying to approach this as like an alliance. And Joel pretty quickly is like, listen, we didn't kill each other. Let's just call it a win-win and move on. Because I don't think he wants to pick up any more people that he has to be responsible of. Certainly no more children, I think, is where he's at.
Agreed.
They have some establishing conversation about how terrible Fedra was to people in Kansas City. And he's like, and Henry's like, listen, I can help you get out of here. I'll show you the way. You clear the way, which I thought was a pretty good bargain. He knows this, he knows where to go. He knows how to get out of the city, the Kansas city, and Joel's violent. So, those two could help each other, right?
Yeah, win-win. I do like how they do some establishing of how Fedra was like seemingly evil, because we didn't get that Fedra bit from the team in Boston, right? Like they weren't necessarily great guys, but they weren't doing the kind of things that this KC Fedra, I guess, were doing. So I like that we got a little bit more backstory on them, because otherwise all these people, these hunters, this new group of people led by Kathleen just seemed like, murderous, crazy people if they were doing this for just to overthrow these guys. So I appreciated that. But I also love the lines that we get back and forth to your point about, you show the way, or I'll show you the way, you clear the way. And Joel's kind of response is like, you seem capable enough, you're armed. And then immediately Henry's like, you're wrong and you're wrong. Like pointing an unloaded gun at you is the closest I've ever come to being violent, which I think was a great line and great dialogue back and forth.
Sure. No, that's a good point about the dialogue, but also like establishing that there was a reason why Kathleen and those people overthrew Fedra. It wasn't like, if Henry had been like, listen, they were constantly giving out stuffed animals and it was cotton candy day every Wednesday, but Kathleen overthrew them, you'd be like, okay, Fedra, it seems like they have their stuff going on. Mm-hmm. That wheatless cotton candy Wednesday sounds like a pretty good time. And I do think very quickly, and this is something that kids do, is we kind of see this happening while the grown-ups are like arguing and kind of taking on the heavier topics. The kids immediately are like recognizing another kid and they're becoming friends, because that's the great thing about kids is they can like connect. And you take your kid to the park one day and they meet their best friend and they're never going to see that kid again, but for some reason they just have so much fun together. And so it's cool in this episode, and they do it quickly, and you kind of know how it's going to end. But I did appreciate how quickly the kids kind of get to know each other, and you see kind of a joy that's developing in a very dark, dark place.
Yeah, and this is a little bit different for the game, because in the game, Sam and Ellie are kind of close to the exact same age. So their relationship is a little bit different, where here, because Ellie's older than Sam, it kind of almost establishes Ellie as a bit of more of a protector for Sam, like and the way they have sibling, their relationship. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I think a good change.
We then have a scene where Henry pulls out a sheet of paper and a pencil, and he's drawing a map. And I love maps, Tom. I'm going to be on record every episode. I love maps. I love when someone has to pull out a legal pad and their blue fountain pen and tell you where the courthouse is and what roads to take. It's just a great memory of mine. Anyways, we discover that Henry's big thing is the tunnels. He's like, did you notice anything? Like, there's no infected on the surface. They all went underground. And so our way out of here is we need to go through the tunnels, because I knew a guy who dated another guy who knew a guy that told me the tunnels were clear. And this plan is not dicey at all. It is, how do they say it? Airtight, I believe is the term.
Yeah, it was a great planning meeting of Henry kind of going through all these little bits and not really having a lot of information, but trying to be as confident as he can. And even when he turns to Sam and asks Sam, or Sam's kind of asking him okay, are they in? And Henry just kind of implies that they're going to be in.
Sure.
So it was a cool back and forth, and I liked it.
Yeah, this actor does a great job of you can almost tell he's BSing his way through this because he needs help. And he doesn't know it, but he's confident enough that you're like, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he doesn't know what's going on. This is terrible. But they agree to it, so they're in the tunnels, and this was a great moment. Joel to Ellie, get your gun out. It's time. And Ellie is so proud to pull out that handgun.
And where does she pull it, right? She pulls it from her pocket and not her backpack. And, of course, Joel gives her a look like, I told you to put it in your backpack. You're going to shoot yourself.
Yeah. I think we have a moment where Henry says something to Joel about being Ellie's dad, and Ellie's like, he's not my dad. I'm not her dad. They both say it with such knee-jerk reactions that it's kind of, it's funny, but it's also establishing that they're, not to the point of being that close. They've grown closer, but they're not there. And then we have just a bunch of tunnels and flashlights. We eventually show up in like a kid's classroom, like an underground bunker type classroom, which is probably where they got all those crayons. I don't know. Who knows? This is Kathleen's classroom. I don't know. A lot of conjecture.
But this is very cool because this is, again, ripped straight from the game. This idea of like underground communities and like the set of rules you see on the whiteboard of how to kind of keep safe. All the drawings on the wall. And there's a specific drawing that they kind of pan to, and this is more specific for the video game audience, where it's kind of has like a kid's drawing, very similar to what we've seen Sam do, of kind of two police officer looking guys, Danny and Ish. And then I think under it says our protectors. And in the game, what you do is to learn about this kind of community down in this underground or these tunnels, you kind of pick up a series of notes from the characters, specifically from Ish. So it talks about him kind of being on his own and him like opening up his guard and kind of letting other people in as he's kind of found others and kind of protecting these families and these other kids that were down in this area. And I think eventually you kind of come across their bodies from them trying to protect the kids and everything. So it's a cool little nod to those folks that have played the video game because it's a touching story in and of itself.
Huh. Interesting. I don't know anything about Ish, but I do know that all kids, well, maybe back in the day, I don't know if it's as common as it is now, but comics bring everyone together. Were you a comics guy, Tom? Did you read comics as a kid?
I was never a comic guy. Yeah, my brothers were, or my middle brother, was big into them, but I don't think I ever really caught on. You?
No. I remember we got some at a flea market. Like I have, the first edition of the first Superman. It's probably somewhere in some sort of musty box in this house. I didn't really care about it. But no, not a comics family. We had television, so which had moving comics, which we like to call cartoons. So we didn't have any time for that reading books, literature.
But the comic they do feature here is called Savage Starlight, which is great because this is kind of a collectible in the game. So when you're running around as Joel and you're running through different houses and you're clearing it out, you'll pick up these different volumes of this comic book, and they're kind of like collectibles for the game that you ultimately kind of give to Ellie, so she's got something to kind of do. And if you flip over the comic books, each one you pick up, they kind of have like little synopsis of what that book is about. And I don't remember all of the details, but ultimately the idea is they draw parallels to the story of Joel and Ellie and all the stuff that they're doing. And they kind of mentioned it briefly here. I don't know I think actually Survive and Endure is pulled from one of the comics that you collect in the game.
When you pick up these comics, do you have to dump something in your inventory in order to hold them? So it's like drop 9mm bullets in order to keep comic 7 of Savage Starlight. Are those the choices you're making during the show?
As I replay this game, it is silly how much inventory you get to hold on to. 7 weapons, 8 weapons at a time, plus your ammunition, plus your comics. It's a bit aggressive.
8 weapons doesn't seem like that much. That's pretty good.
Well, plus 3 Molotov cocktails, 3 med kits, 3 pipe bombs. You just all carry those in your backpack, I guess?
Yeah. My issue with Molotov cocktails is they'd never make it to the Molotov cocktail stage because I'd be like, I could sip half of one today, and it'll still work, right? And then it'll be like, oh, it'll work with just the vapors inside, right? And then...
They're just throwing a bottle with cloth in it at some guy.
Yeah, exactly. Ow, that glass hurts. I was like, sorry. He's like, why'd you light it on fire? It doesn't matter. Why are you
wipe
drunk?
Yourself off with this cloth.
Doesn't matter. I don't know. Anyways, why are you drunk? Oh, because Tom had to take 20 minutes to fix his microphone because of the rain. Anyways, that's not important. We can cut that. We have a soccer scene, and we are a soccer podcast, so it's very important that we dive into this. For those of you that don't know, we started because we love the TV show Ted Lasso, which, spoilers, Tom, when's season 3 of Ted Lasso coming out? Give them the date.
The Ides of March 15th. We're getting Ted Lasso season 3.
I didn't understand that reference, but I do know what the number 15 is, and I do know that March is a month of the year. So Lasso season 3, it's coming back. Anyways, there's a great soccer scene where Ellie kicks the ball and a dog gets in the way and it doesn't go well for the dog, right? That's what happens?
No, not quite.
Oh man, that was great. That dog. All right,
but this is good, right? Because it allows the kids to be kids. I think Henry even has a line like, "Hey, kind of settle up here for a little bit. That way, by the time we exit, it'll be dark and we'll have a little bit of cover." So they kind of allow the kids to be kids, and then it also gives Henry and Joel some time to have a conversation, which I appreciate because I like when these characters get to have some dialogue.
Yeah, no, I just wish that Ellie or Sam got real aggressive during this soccer game and started shouting at the other one about like, no, you got to watch for the cross and then you got to follow it. Like, I wish they got into it like Bradley Cooper's character in The Wedding Crashers. Anyways, we find out as the kids are playing, the adults are talking. Henry starts to talk about, there was a man, he was a great man, had all these great qualities, never afraid, never selfish, always forgiving. And then it was like Jesus Gets Us was flashed across the screen. Actually, wait, that's never mind. That was from something else. And we find out that Sam got sick. So Henry's brother got sick. And in order to get the drug that he needed from Fedra, he had to give up this great man who was the leader of the resistance. And we find out Kathleen's brother. I did like that in this world, I think a simple drug cures leukemia was what I gathered from this conversation. But maybe I'm a little off on that.
Yeah, at least puts it at bay. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine Sam is in a good situation. But I like what they did here because it kind of established like Henry putting, his family and the safety of, really this whole community kind of, I guess, at jeopardy by giving him up. And Henry understood that this guy that he gave up was a good man and was a good person, but it didn't matter to him because he had to do what was best for his family and his brother. So I like that little backstory. And I think he even at one point mentions that he can tell that Joel was a father, even though he knows Ellie is not his kid. He sees and knows that Joel has this type of, father protection mode for Ellie.
Sure. And I figured this is probably also where the doctor established kind of the relationship with Sam and Henry, that Sam got sick, and that's where the doctor that unfortunately meets his demise at the hands of Kathleen, that's where that would have, I don't know, maybe I dug a little bit. Maybe I delved too deep, but that's what I felt.
You can never dive too deep. Just don't dive too deep where you find a hole
Balrog
of infected.
Oh.
Or that, or Balrog.
Wait, are we? What show are we talking about right now? Anyways, from there, we go back to the home of the childhood of our favorite character, Kathleen. I think this is where I grew to love her as a character. I thought, she had a house with bunk beds. I wish I had a house with bunk beds. Perry shows up. We have her waxing poetically about Michael, her brother. He was beautiful. He was great. This Michael guy seems like a real good dude. I wish he was around instead of Kathleen, because Kathleen, not friendly.
Well, and we get this, I guess, idea that Michael kept her safe. And she even says, listen, he was beautiful. I am not beautiful. I'm not forgiving. Michael wanted me to forgive Henry and all these people. And she just doesn't have it in her. And even I think Perry mentions to Kathleen, he's like, Kathleen, we're still here for you. He didn't change anything. You did. Which is, again, I think an important line, because we needed to understand why Perry and why all these guys are following Kathleen, because we haven't really gotten much. So if the idea that Kathleen's brother was kind of the lead of this resistance, and now my assumption would be that Michael's death was kind of the catalyst for this uprising, kind of led by Kathleen, and that's how she's still kind of leading this group. But I like that little bit of extra backstory that we got for this, because I think it is helpful. I agree with you. It still probably doesn't necessarily make me like or understand Kathleen's motive, I guess, as much. But I like that we got more of that.
Yeah. Kathleen, after Michael was executed, she rallied everyone. She was like, "Listen, my brother told us to forgive with bullets. Let's go forgive them with bullets." And then
we're going to give 4 bullets to each person's chest. That's what he said.
That would make sense, because she's a kindergarten teacher teaching math. So she's like, kids, if you have 4 bullets and you put 4 bullets into Fedra's chest, how many bullets do you have? And the kids are like, freedom! Anyways, whew, that got dark, but this show's dark, and it's storming outside, so that's all part of the podcast. Nighttime neighborhood, which is what I wrote in the outline. Oh, this is where they're moving through the neighborhood at nighttime. Good job, Julian. Anyways, we have a conversation as they're sneaking through the cul-de-sac. He's like, we're almost out. We've just got to get across, that yard to that fence to that dog, and we're home free. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, this is not the time to be counting your chickens. Yeah. Don't show the picture of your baby girl that you haven't seen, but you can't wait to meet, because stuff's about to go poorly. Also, I was like, hey, noise and light discipline, don't be talking so loudly in the neighborhood. And sure enough, we have a sniper. And so someone's taking pot shots at him from the tall building at the end of the cul-de-sac. We get the old flanking maneuver from Joel. And this starts the best part of the episode, which from here to the end, all good stuff. Loved every moment of it.
Yeah, we get just a whole bunch of action here. But I like that at one point, Joel, before he kind of runs off and starts his flanking maneuver, he kind of says, like, listen, after seeing this guy shoot a couple of times, like, it's dark, this guy has bad aim, and even asks Ellie, like, hey, do you trust me? Because Ellie's freaking out, does not want Joel to leave her in this situation. But we get, again, a little bit more establishing their relationship, and that Ellie does trust Joel to save her.
Yep. Joel sticks his hand above the car, and he's like, watch, this guy's got bad aim. And then the guy shoots him through the hand, and he's like, ooh, see, I didn't expect that. He only shot me through the middle of the hand, didn't get any of my fingers. Anyways.
Yeah, try to shoot me. I'm going to catch the bullet.
Catch the bullet. Oh, that's such a great Key and Peele sketch.
Yeah, go watch the Rambo Key and Peele sketch.
Oh, man, that's so good. Anyways, Joel ends up in the house. We find out it's an old man sniper, and the old man very quickly, I think, goes to sleep. Maybe he had taken his medication. I'm not real sure what happens to him, but I think he sleeps peacefully. But not before he has called Kathleen on the radio, and enter the resistance with their car snowplow vehicle that just dope. Yeah, very cool. One of those moments where people running on the ground are faster than a vehicle moving, and they keep cutting back and forth, and you're like, I feel like those people are running faster because the distance keeps getting more and more. But I'm not going to nitpick a show that gave us this many crayons. So I just wanted Joel to shoot Kathleen in this moment. That's all I wanted. Like, he's up there, he's got the sniper rifle, shoot Kathleen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he had taken some shots, and he missed quite a few to start, but I think when that car snowplow thing got super close to Ellie, that's when he finally hit his mark.
Shoots the driver, yeah.
Yeah, and the car goes into the house, starts the fire, and then boom, just kind of sets this more ominous stage. And this was like, I don't know, watching this, I kind of felt bummed a bit, because I knew from watching the trailers that this big bloater and infected is going to come out of like the ground with fire all around. So I'm like, oh, okay, here we come. This is where this is going to happen. Didn't know what the timing was or whatever, but I knew right when this thing got on fire that, all right, we're going to see the infected come running through now.
I thought we agreed not to watch previews. I'm not watching previews. Where are you watching previews at?
This was like an opening trailer before the season even came out, because they teased the idea of the bloater kind of coming out of the ground. So you only got like maybe half a second of it kind of putting its hand out and maybe the top of its head, but it was enough for me to kind of draw that conclusion. Because again, obviously having played the games too, I understood what was going to happen in this sequence.
Sure. Must be nice to be so smart, know everything that's happening. Kathleen does her bad guy monologuing where she's like calling for Henry, and she's like, listen, Sam's gonna be fine, kids die all the time, if he dies, not a big deal, you gave up my brother so he could live, but kids die all the time. She just kept saying that, and I was like, I don't think you're hearing your words. And in a situation like this, I always think about the people in the background that can't quite hear. They're just like standing around with guns being like, what's she talking about? who are we looking for? Why did we snowplow all these cars? And then someone's like, shut up, man. You got a granola bar? And he's like, yeah, here you go. Is there wheat in it? Doesn't matter. Anyways, Kathleen's terrible. And we have kind of essentially the theme of this episode, which I'll let you dive into, but it's like who's worth saving and who would you give up in order to, save someone else. But you talk about the high moral stuff. I'll drink. Go ahead.
No, we kind of mentioned it earlier. It's the idea of like saving family, or in her case, kind of avenging her family member that got killed, versus kind of the greater good, and like whether that individual love is more important. And the kind of writer and creator of the show, Craig Mazin, put it eloquently, saying like, my brother is more important than your brother, and it's a decision that love makes. It's not a rational one, which I thought was kind of interesting. And that a lot of these characters act on love more so than what they do being a rational idea. Because like Henry giving up Michael is not probably a rational decision, because it's going to lead to this uprising and all the craziness that ensued here. Even though he did want to protect his brother, it may not have been the best decision, but it was a decision made through love.
Sure. No, that's these are the things that shows like this make you think about, and hope that you're never in that situation. Because I'd give up everybody. I couldn't give enough names in order to save my own skin.
We are definitely a pod of collaborators.
Yes, we are. Good callback, Dom. Speaking of callbacks, Henry gives himself up. He steps out from behind the vehicle, and it really feels like Kathleen could have been like, is there someone else behind that vehicle with you? Because the kids are back there, and Henry doesn't like nod to them. He's like, I'm giving myself up, and then he's like jerking his head towards behind the car. He's like, the kids are back there. Oh, I'm sorry. In this situation, Henry's giving up the children. In your situation, he's trying to save the children. That's the difference between you and I. But it doesn't matter, because what happens? The sinkhole opens up, and we get this very cool infected attack. A lot of infected. There's a name for the big infected that I love. They're like, listen, here's what you came for. And this character comes out of the ground, and I was like, oh, it's bigger than the other ones, so it must be badder than the other ones.
Yes.
But yeah, what was going on here, Tom?
I think the idea is this is like the fourth stage of the infected. So it's kind of clicker and then bloaters. So in general, the idea with like smaller people at a certain point, when they're a clicker, they will just cease to kind of be. They'll go find like a quiet space and then kind of like disintegrate into the wall, like we saw in the very first episode. But there's like, some humans that are just massive, like you think football players or bodybuilders and that kind of stuff, that can kind of endure the infection for longer. And it's pretty much just a clicker on steroids, if you will. So when this kind of bloater comes out, they're one of the most toughest enemies in the game, and they like, you've got to pretty much throw your whole arsenal at them. So the second that thing comes out of the ground, you're like, uh-oh, Perry's in trouble.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Okay, so bloaters come from like big, muscly, like bad dudes, right?
Yeah, so you'd be a bloater, buddy.
Oh, okay, man. I'm so glad you took that. I was gonna have to fish for it. I thought I was gonna have to fish for it, Tom, but oh man, good. Yeah, no,
I picked
that's
up the bait.
Good.
You got me.
I like it.
But
so
apparently,
much.
So we see Perry get his demise here and just gets his head ripped off in just brutal fashion. But listening to Mazin talk about it, he apparently wanted him to get like ripped in half at the torso, but had to be told like that's not how bodies work. Because he just wanted that cool visual.
Sure.
So apparently they did like mock it up and ended up kind of going this route, because in the game what's really brutal is like if these bloaters or a clicker, if they actually get you in the game and kill you, you'll see like the sequence kind of play out and you just get smashed. So these bloaters have a handful of these kind of fatality scenes that are just brutal. And this, I think, ripping the head is kind of one of them.
Sure. But back to the bloaters, the people that would be bloaters also like would be really handsome people, though, right? Like super, like handsome people would be bloaters. Would you say that? And like the opposite sex would be like really like attracted to them. would you?
Female mushrooms would really love the fungi that is the bloater.
But anyways, it doesn't matter. All right.
Well, you're fishing for something else there.
No,
I'm not gonna say you're handsome. I mean, you've got abs because you don't eat gluten, but.
Oh, the lies told on the podcast. All right. The one thing I did want to point out is, and I don't think we're giving Barry Pepper enough credit here, just some great sniper work in the tower, on par with Saving Private Ryan.
Joel's crushing it here.
Just love it. Love when he misses, love when he hits. It's all good. Ooh, the thing that I do not find good and do not enjoy is Child Infected. Did not like this. Did not care for it. Could have done without. I understand it's probably part of the game and the story.
It's not part of the game, which I'm glad it wasn't part of the game because, having to do that in the game and take out one of these like child infected would be brutal. But I think what they were trying to go for is just kind of like the innocence and horror of a young kid. And like this kid actor that played this was so creepy, and it was apparently like a contortionist. So all those little like crazy moves, that's like not CGI. That is this little girl in this back seat just being creepy as all get out.
Yeah, it reminded me of watching The Ring for the first time.
Yeah.
No, don't care for it. Don't like the thought of a creepy kid like murdering me from my back seat. Not fun. I did think of this from like sometimes the shows I'm watching it, like I can see the video game mission. And like this to me was definitely you're playing Joel, they put you in a window and you've got it's like a escort or protect mission, sniper mission, and so you're just shooting people and clickers and bloaters. Yeah, same thing. As you're trying to protect,
correct.
You're like,
100%
yeah, I love it. I love it. When a plan comes together. Man, I bet bloaters are also like really smart people too. I bet smart people that like think like really, really big thoughts and are handsome and. Anyways, all right. A clicker gets Kathleen. I honestly was I supposed to be cheering for the clickers? Because I got to be honest, I cheered for the clickers and the bloaters and I don't know what are the little kids called? The creepy little infected kids. I was cheering for all of them as they were murdering all of these resistance people that seemed a little bit terrible.
Yeah, which I think tells you the show's doing a good job because it's like I'm almost dehumanizing these people that kind of took over Fedra, even though they were likely warranted in it if they were really getting kind of tortured and everything that Fedra was doing it or how they were treating them. But it is interesting how it kind of turns it around and you're like kind of excited that this group of people are now going to seemingly get decimated because not only does this kind of group of mercenaries get decimated, but they're now all running towards the city. So the city's likely completely toast.
Sure.
But I do like the idea that we've got this young child clicker taking Kathleen out. So I'm assuming this was probably one of Kathleen's old students that has just had enough.
Yep. And that's vengeful. Why they cut in and the clicker grabs her and gets real close to her face and goes, "Give me my crayons." And sorry, I recently watched Air Force One where he's like, "Get off my plane," and I can't stop thinking about that line delivery. Whew, what a great movie. Terrible movie, actually. Anyways, that's a different podcast. I don't want to give anything away. I've got thoughts on Air Force One 30 years later. Harrison Ford, just a great president. Vote for that guy right now. So wonderful.
He might actually play president in a new Marvel movie.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Oh, well, once he's done making his 7th Indiana Jones, I'm all for it. That guy needs more money. Anyways, they escape. The clickers, great diversion. Joel, Henry, the kids, they escape. They have a conversation, I guess because they're kind of evaluating like they're watching the kids operate and what they've just gone through. And so it's an interesting conversation that they have.
Yeah, because I think ultimately Joel says like it's easier when you're a kid because you don't have anyone else relying on you. So they're able to shake this stuff off or kind of move past it. And we'll see that with Ellie kind of here at the end. But it's sad and I don't know, unfortunately probably a little bit true, right?
Right. At this point, are they in the hotel? Is that where they're in the?
Yeah.
They're in the. Okay, and they have the conversation about like endure and survive, which is the motto from the comic. And I think this is a funny it's not like breaking the fourth wall, but it's a funny, like, making fun of something that the show had to do or the video game had to do, where Joel's like, not great, endure and survive. It's, kind of means the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Henry's like redundant. And it's funny too, because if you listen to their follow-up podcast, like the official one, Neil Druckmann even says that. He's like, oh, these people are enduring. So like, what's another word that's kind of like endure? And he apparently went to like thesaurus.com to look up another line and found survive, and then wrote that into the video game script.
That's great. Awesome.
So it's probably, calling back, maybe a little bit of self-deprecation, calling back his own silly line.
We have some conversation between Ellie and Sam, and Sam is scribbling his questions about, like, are you ever scared? And it's kind of nice. You just see the kids, like, once again, relating and kind of going into some deeper things. And this is, like you said earlier, I think in the game you mentioned they're the same age. In this dynamic, he's younger than her, so he's kind of looking up to her as a, hey, and he's like, are you ever scared? Which I think is a better dynamic for how this show plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it very much mirrors kind of Henry and Sam's conversation earlier, where Henry's kind of trying to be strong and show that he's not scared. But Ellie's the opposite. Ellie's like, yes, of course I'm scared in this world. And she kind of tries to like write it off and be kind of comical and funny. Like, yeah, of course I'm scared all the time of scorpions, which is, kind of funny, but it's a line straight from the game. She makes kind of the same joke with Sam, but then ultimately writes down this little pad that she's scared of ending up alone. And it's heart-wrenching because I think everybody ultimately in her life has either left her or has died. So it's definitely a huge fear of hers.
That's a great point. And this leads to who I don't know. I don't know that I saw this coming. I just, maybe it's because it was late and I was not in a complete state of mind, but I just didn't see what was about to happen. My wife kept saying about Sam, she's like, oh, the kid is darling, the actor's darling. And she's like, I'm going to be devastated when they kill him. And she said it in the beginning of the episode. And I was like, I don't think they're going to kill him. Like, not in this episode. But nope. He asked the question, if you turn into a monster, are you still you inside? And that's when we find out that Sam was bit. And there is that moment where him and Henry, I think, are under the car during the clicker attack, and they're kind of like kicking the clickers away, but they don't telegraph it enough that I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we even get this kind of, again, heart-wrenching scene where Ellie kind of realizes what's happening, and I don't think she's giving him false hope. She's wanting to think that she is the hero that really everybody is telling her she is. So she shows him that she was bit, her blood is medicine, she can help him. And it's heart-wrenching. And this is not something that you see in the game, but it was an added bit for the show and just makes this just that much more difficult. And, I mean, we even get this little bit where, Ellie promises Sam that she's going to stay awake and make sure, like, she's there with him. And, unfortunately, Ellie falls asleep.
Yeah, because if she would have stayed awake, he never would have turned, right? So
yeah, I don't think it's Ellie. That. I think, I don't know. Like, but
sorry, I'm trying to make light on a heart-wrenching moment here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but it's tough because Ellie didn't know what to do or say in this situation, and she made a promise that, and it's not her fault. She'd been through a lot in that day in these sequences, but she fell asleep and wakes up in the morning and there's Sam at the end of the bed. And we even get this little moment of, oh, okay, Sam's at the end of the bed.
He's okay.
She tried to say hi. He's okay. But he's looking the other direction. And this is interesting too, because this almost made me think that, Sam gives that line, if you turn into a monster, is it still you inside? And I would argue that this almost kind of shows us that, yeah, like it still is you inside, at least in this early stage, because we do see that Sam is still deaf here in this sequence. It's not like he's fully been taken over by the infection and just kind of smells or whatever these infected do to attack other people. So I thought that was, kind of an interesting little touch that, Sam is still himself, but he just can't control himself.
Sure. I also, to your point about Ellie, like using her own blood as a cure, the argument I had here was like, Ellie should probably go tell Joel and Henry what's up. But I think she truly believes that she like has helped him and that they're, she cannot believe he's going to turn. And so that would be my argument for why she doesn't go into the other room and be like, hey, like maybe she waits until Sam falls asleep and she's like, hey, Sam was bit, like we need to watch. I think she actually thinks she is taking a chance on being the cure, which I think is interesting. But unfortunately, Sam turns. He immediately attacks Ellie once she goes around the bed. Cool shot here where they fly through the door, and then I think this is important. Like Henry shoots Sam almost like reactionary. Like it's not like I don't feel like we get a long pause, but maybe I'm misremembering it. And also I think it's important that he does the shooting and not Joel, because there's like a different level of, if Joel would have shot Sam, I think that changes, what happens next, which is just terrible. But yeah.
No, I think you're right. Like Henry, it's instinctive the way he ultimately saves Ellie here, because like he shoots at the floor first. I think when Joel is going to try to go and save Ellie, but he just doesn't really know what to do and how to process this, but he sees somebody in danger, and he has the unfortunate thing and has to shoot his brother. And after he does that, then I think it starts to hit him and it all just rushes in, and that's where he starts to realize, like, okay, if my brother's out in this world, like, what am I living for? And just heart-wrenching when he turns the gun on himself. And again, this is, I mean, almost identically shot from the game. And even knowing all this stuff was coming, it was, I tried to prepare myself for it, but I had to watch this twice and rewatch this episode for this podcast, and it was just terrifying and horrible to watch.
Sure. Well, Tom, if you were better at video games, there is a way that you saved them both. So, Unfortunately, because you're a poor video game player, they both had to die. The other thing if you think about these things for too long, they just make you sad. But I was thinking, like, what Henry did for Sam, like in terms of giving up Michael, in terms of going on the run, like all of that he did only for Sam to turn, him to kill him. Like the weight of that, of like, you've done so much to try and like save your little brother, only for this to be the outcome, would just be a devastating and hopeless situation. So
it's similar to Kathleen, right? Where Kathleen is just dead set on vengeance, and that's all that she has. And I think even when like that bloater came out of the ground, Perry's trying to tell her like run, and she could have run, but she decided to keep chasing Henry, which ultimately led to her demise as well.
Right.
So it's just kind of this idea of whether it's vengeance or trying to do, what you think is right in the moment, may not necessarily be. And again, a lot of these characters are driven by that idea and concept that we've seen throughout the series thus far. We're only halfway through, but it's that concept of love and what love makes people do.
Sure. And on this Valentine's Day, let's talk about what love means. Anyways, Joel buries them, which I thought was an interesting, like Joel kind of being the guy that would be the first one to just be like, leave them, like we don't have time. But he takes the time to bury them.
Well, I don't think he's doing this for himself, right? Like he certainly has a respect, I think, for Sam and Henry, but we've seen Joel time and time again understand the world that he lives in and wouldn't take the time as somebody trying to survive and endure to do this. But I think he's doing this for Ellie, to kind of give them some closure and just kind of show Ellie that, there's still humanity in him.
Oh, that's interesting, because I took it as he was more invested because Ellie seems kind of over it. She she writes her note, but then she's like, all right, let's go. Like, I felt like, I don't know. I felt like Ellie was more casual about it than Joel was, but, I don't know. Episode was devastating. Thank you, Tom, for making me watch a show that makes me sad, and there's still hope for humanity. For those of you out there that are wondering when you watch the show. But great episode. I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but they just did it so well. Well acted, well done. It hits you with, anytime a show is willing to like make the tough choices in order to stay true to the story and like what the world that they've built is, I think is interesting to watch. If this would have like turned out rosy where everyone high-fived and went their separate ways, I just don't think that's the world that we're living in this show.
Yeah, and I think, again, what we'll see, and like we talked about time and time again, is all these people that are coming across the path of Joel and Ellie, even though, like we said, they don't stay alive for very long, which is unfortunate, but they're all, kind of adding puzzle pieces to their relationship and bringing Ellie and Joel closer and closer. And I would argue that this episode is likely the catalyst for Joel really seeing Ellie as kind of her like he is her father figure at this point, and understands that Henry was doing everything he can to save and keep Sam alive. And, now after burying them both, Joel understands that this is what he has to do for Ellie. Sure.
Well, I mean, great way to end a podcast. Super sad. So everyone go be sad. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions or comments, if we missed stuff, you can hit us up on Twitter. Tom runs that. He doesn't let me have any of the info. You can email us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We will be working through the rest of this show. I'm sure it will get happier and happier all the way until March 15th when season 3 of Ted Lasso starts. But yeah, Tom, what did I miss?
Yeah, again, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, at Team Binge or Team Binge Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you guys kind of joining along. It's always fun. And again, I mean, this was a heart-wrenching episode. Knew it was coming, but I'm super excited for what's to come, because I think this kind of lays the groundwork for a lot of interesting stuff moving forward.
We'll be here for it. I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. We'll see you next time, everybody. Thunderclap.
Awesome.